All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the GF training today, where we are going to be talking about wall graphics. This one is near and dear to my heart. Having spent 6 years as the product manager for wall graphics here at GF, prior to the current role, of course, this is where I got to spend a lot of time. Today, we're going to talk about how to take the challenges of wall graphics and turn them into profitable opportunities for growth. We'll dive in, and hopefully by the end of this session, you'll have a little bit of a repeatable way to read a wall, to match the material, and to protect your margin every time that job lands on your desk. Oh, and we'll also have Q&A open. We'll come back and answer any questions you might have at the end of the presentation. So look for that at the top of the sheet. All right, I always start with a scenario, and this is one that actually for me is kind of nostalgic. It really kicked off a lot of the training and education journey for me here at GF. For this sign shop, the mural looked like a routine wall job. It was smooth painted drywall. It was an indoor environment, standard install, nothing that needed really a second thought, right? Oh, and also they had just used the same material successfully at this same bike shop, but their other store location just a few miles away. It applied easily. It looked great when they left, but a few days later, they got a call. The graphic had started failing. They came back. They need to figure out, what went wrong here, and a lot of it, and the questions as we dug into it, the process just ran on autopilot. It's like it worked over there, so it should work over here, right? They didn't test. They made some assumptions, and ultimately, the chance they took, it didn't work out. And that's the difference between getting lucky and being repeatable or having a process. And so today we're going to talk about how to build that process to read the wall, to match the material, and really to protect your margin before a simple job becomes a reprint, a reinstall, and a difficult customer conversation. If you caught any of our earlier webinars, this will sound familiar. And if this is your first session, welcome. We start with a common problem regardless of what we're doing. And it's that mindset that I have a job to do, a graphic to stick in this, and I only want to do it once. That's it. That's the whole goal, right? Because there's nothing more annoying, there's nothing more expensive than having to reprint, having to rework, or make that second trip to the job site. And we learned in the earlier surface intelligence and others that every preventable failure starts with one of these four things. It's either a surface misread, a material mismatch, process gap, or some risk that we just didn't see coming, right? We used a low-tack adhesive on low surface energy plastic. We didn't use heat in a roller on a textured wall application. We didn't clean the window, and now there's dirt and debris behind a falling graphic. So we need to intentionally think about, and this is the mindset, what are we sticking to? What are we sticking with? How are we applying it? And what could go wrong? Or as I say, the surface material, method, and risk. And I want you to keep those four in your head. We're going to come back to them more than once today, but surface material, method, and risk. And those issues, and in order to understand and to avoid those issues, we really need good information about what is it that we're trying to do, right? What's our objective? And put together these 7 questions to form the basis of that discovery, and hopefully do most of the work before you ever even have to open a catalog or reach for a roll of material. And that's understanding, what are you sticking to? What's the surface you're sticking to? How long does it need to last? Is this a short-term or a long-term install? What type of film do you need? Are we talking cast, calendared, matte, gloss, clear, white, permanent or removable adhesive? Do I want this to stay and fight and grip? Or do I want this and need this to remove cleanly when it's time to come down? Do I need a laminate for the particular application, right? Is it needed, or is it wanted? Is it helpful, right? Is it interior or exterior? Those kinds of things will tell me a lot about the durability of the solution that I need. It'll tell me about, the prep. It tells a lot about the job, right? And then any special features. Do I need it with anti-graffiti or non-slip or things like that? They're the same 7 questions really from all of the sessions that we've done. It's just a different surface. And if you can't answer these with confidence, well, okay, cool. We keep digging and we do some testing. We start off with the first question and really what am I sticking to, or what's the surface we're applying this to? And this to me is the most important, and it's the biggest variable. Walls are complex. They're not simple flat surfaces like glass, right? Or even that we assume they are. They live in an ecosystem, and I'd say an ecosystem of conditions and demands. I look at it this way, and as they're there, the 4 things I need to read every time, and that is the surface itself. I need to read what's on it. I need to read what's around it and what the customer actually needs. Sometimes I over-engineer or under-engineer a solution based on the requirements. Texture matters more than a lot of people expect. Even like a light orange peel reduces contact between the adhesive and the wall. The condition of the wall, maybe it needs repairs before moving forward, or maybe you still move forward, but it's something that gets documented and signed off on. That's often for your own protection or setting that expectation with your customer. The paint type, the paint gauge and change how well things are going to stick. And if paint is too new, if it's just been painted a couple days ago, or if it's 20-year-old paint, right? Like whether it's too young or too old, the surface here is really going to inform the requirements for what we need to do, how we're going to proceed from here. And each of these variables, I kind of view them in my head like little levers that shift the response on how to solve for it. I added in this line of control the controllables because sometimes some of those tensions can be managed, right? Paint can be allowed time to cure, walls can be patched, surfaces can be sealed, irregularities like there's just some random bumps in the wall. Those can be sanded or smooth, right? But if not, we can always adjust our solution to set us up for success anyway. The next part is what are we sticking with, right? Let's look at both adhesive characteristics and film construction here. There's separate variables that work together ultimately to form our solution. In surface intelligence, we talked about tack versus bond. Bond can also be the release or the peel, et cetera. There are different ways to say the ultimate stick, right? There are 2 different things happening here. They're not the same thing, but they do work together. Tack is the instant read. It's the moment the film touches the wall. Does it grip? Can I still reposition and correct it before it locks down, right? How well is it sticking and starting? And that tack determines my starting point. Bond, that release, that peel, that ultimate adhesion to the wall is what happens after that. The adhesive is continuing to wet out, to flow into the surface. On walls, on flat paint, it fills in that microscopic texture. And what it's doing is it's building that real hold over the following 15 minutes, 24 hours, 72 hours. Tack tells you how the relationship starts. Bond tells you whether it's going to last. Does that make sense? All right, so kind of like a material can grab hard on contact and it can still underperform on bond if it doesn't wet out. And that brings us to the second piece. Because our film face, we're not just dealing with adhesive. We have a film that pairs with that. Our film face on most of our wall materials is a 6 mil calendared polymeric vinyl. It's great for smooth surfaces. It's super easy to handle. It behaves like a laminated film, right? But if it's a textured wall, that thick film won't have conformability. And sometimes we need that extra element, not just an aggressive adhesive, but we need conformability of the film to get good contact so that our adhesive can wet out. Quick nerdy 30, and I did this in the vehicle webinar last month about what the different films, the calendared, monomeric, polymeric, cast, what that means from, kind of what it means in practice. The big idea here is tension. And the analogy, thanks Dallas Fowler and others that have talked about it as a rubber band. Um, if you think of the calendared monomeric film, that flat state at rest, there's already the pizza dough analogy, where it already has some internal shrink forces to it. You get into the polymeric film, and it's a little better chemistry. There's not so much. And again, this calendared polymeric, better chemistry, less internal tension or shrink force on it. That's where, again, most of our wall films and most of these windows, walls, and floors performance films live, without going to the total cast. And if we're pizza dough for calendared, we're pancake batter for cast polymeric, where it's poured, it's formed, it's a similar chemistry, but a totally different manufacturing process. Doesn't have that same internal tension pulling against it. And again, remember, film has the counterpart with the adhesive. So even this with the film, it's just one variable. It's not the whole thing. Now, when we apply some stress to it, when we take that calendared monomeric and we add just 10% stretch, we see that in this example, it gets critical as far as the amount of tension that's wanting to snap back, like that rubber band that's pulled tight. The calendared polymeric, with just a little bit better chemistry on it, when you're stretching that extra bit, it's got a little bit more pullback. It's got a little bit more tension on it that wants to come back and pull, versus the cast that you add 10% stretch. It's really minimal as far as the pullback forces that are going to be on that. On walls, so the same mental model kind of applies to textures. The more topography the film has to conform to, the more we need to know whether it's going to relax into the surface or if it's going to fight and pull back over time. For most walls, we're still really generally in that two-dimensional range. I don't need to go, even that slight texture. I'm not getting into a 10% stretch. I don't need a three-dimensional cast solution, but I do need to confirm if I need conformability or some additional contact. Back in the Surface Intelligence webinar, we used the example of a mural in a hotel lobby. It was painted drywall with a slight orange peel texture, and they expected it to hold for 3 to 5 years. The paint is flat finish and dry to the touch. And we look at that, and okay, texture, that's one thing. We need to think about that. It changes that adhesive film contact math, right? With a rigid film, the adhesive's only touching the peaks, not the valleys. So the contact area is reduced regardless of what the paint is like. But that's the other part, is that, and it's the trap that catches a lot of people more than texture does, is that smooth, fresh, low VOC paint. It looks and feels like it's ready, right? It's dry to the touch. But the thing with the low VOC and zero VOC paints is that the chemistry is active and curing long after it feels dry to the touch. Don't ever just trust feel alone. You need to verify the cure time, pay attention to the texture, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. Patch test the actual wall before you let the job move forward. The next variable is the method, the how am I applying it, and kind of what am I looking for there. As we read the wall, we need to check and see if there's anything in need of repair, for one. Was primer used before it was painted? That element alone will determine whether you're going to be able to cleanly remove the decal, regardless of the adhesive type or how long it's on there. We cover this in the wall application guide, and a resource link is here, but you really need that separate step of priming before paint to anchor the layers. The primer seals and provides an anchor layer. The paint anchors to the primer and gives you a solid-ish layer to then adhere and apply to. That's your color-fast, washable, scrubbable, durable surface. The primer and the paint serve different functions. Be careful if it's just primer. Be careful if it's a 2-in-1 primer plus paint. Those are things where they're not really, it's taking the hiding portion of the primer, not necessarily the bonding. So if you're doing that on fresh drywall, you're going to see failures in those areas where there's drywall mud, joint compound, and all that. And the paint and cure. Okay, paint needs time to cure. Your paint can is going to say it's on the short end, 7 days, 14. I see some that are even 28 days that it needs for that outgassing to stop. Applying graphics over uncured paint is kind of like putting a laminate on a solvent print that hasn't outgassed yet. It introduces a ton of risk, and our job is, again, because I only want to do this job once. So we need to try and mitigate as much risk as we can. And I just encourage you, don't rush on that part. The next is to inspect and clean. All right, we need to clean with some isopropyl and water, sprayed on the rag, never on the wall, and very light cleaning. We're just trying to get dust and debris, things that will interrupt our contact with the wall. Never use household cleaners, never use ammonia, never use degreasers and things. They'll leave a residue that'll kill wet out for your adhesive. But also some of those solvents and some of those heavier cleaners can actually reawaken the wall. You've got a water-based paint, it reawakens and makes it so that it's just like applying on fresh paint. You got to be really careful balancing what you do there. And then finally, the patch test. So confirming the actual material with the actual wall before you commit to the whole job. This is an important step. It takes a little effort, sure, but guys, this answers every question we've been asking all session. The initial tack. So we take a 4x4 square is a super easy method to do. You can use a couple different materials. The first thing we're looking for is, does it grab? Does it feel like it's sticking? That starting point that I'm using for my ultimate bond of this material, are we starting at a good spot? That's your first read on how the adhesive is answering the challenges of the wall, right? After 15 minutes, I'm going to check for edge lift. I'm going to look and see, a sample, one of the, actually a low tack 6mm. Within 15 minutes, it was already starting to peel up at the edges. It didn't have that initial and bite that it needed for the wall. So it was already starting to lift up. So that's really the earliest sign that the surface isn't cooperating, or that I'm choosing the wrong solution. After 20, we're seeing of the adhesive at peak, and if you don't see it lifting or failing at the edges at this point, that's a great sign, right? And after those 24 hours, that's where we check the bond integrity. Once the adhesive has had that time to build, that wet out part again. So when you do that removal, and I recommend do this in an inconspicuous area, we're testing for surface stability and we're testing for residue. With this, and I know there are some wall test kits out there that send you with a little fish scale, and you can check and see if you're in a good tension zone. You can tell the difference between what I call a zippy or a papery kind of feel, where it's really clear this doesn't have a lot of resistance between the graphic or the sample that I'm peeling off and the wall. I don't need something that can stand up to NASCAR speeds like a vehicle graphic, right? I need something that can handle incidental contact. I want to make sure that I have that good surface contact or connection there. And does the wall come back clean? The grayback sample here that managed to pull a little piece of paint. Oops, maintenance. That's telling me that either there's wall damage, or yes, this is going to be a very aggressive bond with the wall, and I should expect that if we do this full mural and they want clean removal, That solution might be just a little bit too aggressive for it. And I say fail at any stage. Any of the materials fail at any of the stage, don't proceed until it's corrected or a material is respecified. This patch test, it costs you a little scrap a piece in a day, maybe. But a failed mural, that costs you the reprint, the material, the labor, the relationship. As a side note, a lot of the training, we talk about being the expert for your customer. This is one where if you show up to bid a job and you pull out 3-4 patch materials, that lends credibility to your cause, right? If you can show up and they want to do a wall mural and you're like, hey, do you mind if I've got 4 different materials here, 3 different that I want to apply to the wall just to see in the 15 minutes that we're standing here and talking about things. I just want to see if we get good adhesion to the wall. That tells me if I'm going to need additional prep work, primer, repair, things like that. Get in the habit of carrying even some of our wall material swatches and just apply them with the customer present. Again, this gives you vital information, even if it is just for that 15-minute preview where you're checking for edge lift and to see if the surface is cooperating. All right, and a little bit about the different solutions, and I'm doing this not so much as a product, although these are all great wall materials. But beyond the film itself, you have real differences in adhesive systems. We have these as large wall posters. If I show you here, behind me on my wall, I've got a number of these, the 227, 226, and 229 HDR. And we did these in these big wall posters here to be able to demonstrate the different materials and how they look and feel on the surface. So 226 smooth wall workhorse. This is that microsphere removable adhesive, super easy to handle. If you're doing convention centers, hotels, or even bedroom murals, handling is great. It's not really great on conformability though. If I have a super textured wall, this probably isn't the one that I'm going to be reaching for. The tack is good. It's got a good feel and it can counteract some of those washable, or again, paint types that may not like stuff generally adhering to it. Flat paints are notorious for that, and 226 works great. The bond, the ultimate peel or wet out, it's moderate, and some of that is the design of the adhesive that's on here, is to not be super aggressive. We want that long-term clean removability, even reposition and reuse those materials. 227 uses the exact same adhesive system and thickness, but it does it with a thinner film. You go from the 6 mil to the 3.4, and you can kind of see in those samples there from my wall how the 6 mil version sort of smooths out the texture of the smooth painted drywall, the painted texture. And 227 mirrors it. And it being that thinner conformable film takes on that texture of the wall. And then you've got the 229 HTR, that Walmart canvas with the high tack removable adhesive. And you don't even see the texture on the wall. The canvas embossed pattern that's on that completely hides completely hides and covers that little bit of texture that's on the wall. Excellent handling. Again, not super conformable, but high tack, great bond, clean removal. All of those are, again, just great opportunity or great materials here to look at. All right, into permanent or removable. The debate, as it were. So permanent versus removable, these are both valid paths really to the same job. And the deciding factor isn't necessarily which one is better. Removable adhesive, for me, it comes down to workability. It lets you lift and reposition with far less risk of pulling paint. If you're doing a big multi-panel mural where alignment is key, that forgiveness of the removable, repositionable adhesive is invaluable. Permanent adhesive, yeah, it gives you better odds of doing it once, you know, and that again, I've got a job to do and I only want to do it once. So cool. Permanent adhesive, it's going to stick, it's going to stay, or it's going to at least give you better odds. I've even seen that where permanent adhesives don't work. Always do your patch test. But with it gives you a tighter margin for error. It really asks more of the install or more of the installer. You need alignment precision. You need to be really careful about removing your liner and how much you expose. And yeah, don't make premature contact with that other panel, or you're not going to have that same workability. That doesn't mean it's invalid, right? That is still an everyday solution. And in the next slide, I'll show you a couple of the materials. It's about deciding deliberately. Don't put it on autopilot. Know what the requirements are. Set the expectations with the customer first. How long does it stay up? What does the wall need to look like when it comes down? All of those, aesthetic and performance questions. And I threw it all into a matrix here, right? Different materials have different strengths. We balance permanent versus removable, but also how does it handle? How does it conform? What does the tack like? How's the bond overall? And clean removal. Some are really easy to handle, but not conformable, vice versa. And unfortunately, there isn't a one size solution, just like how not all walls are the same, right? I wish it were like windows. Windows are easy, and walls present, it's not challenges, opportunities, right? And this is why we test. Again, I wish I could just give a single solution for everything, but unfortunately, this comes down to finding the balance and managing those tensions of surface, material, method, and risk. All right. I get this question a lot. Do I need to laminate? When should you laminate wall graphics? And I treat this a little bit as a material question, not just a protection question. Laminate does a couple things. It adds durability. So if I'm cleaning chemicals, protection in high traffic, high touch areas. It does add to the handling experience. There's less stress, or it adds stiffness, so it's easier to handle when I install, or it adds some special function. Maybe it's dry erase or anti-graffiti or some scratch resistant coating on it. I think all of those are valid. Laminates can offer protection, right? But on short-term stuff or on walls where nothing's really going to touch it or it doesn't need heavy cleaning, I say skip it. And the reason I do, because the question is essentially, what does this wall have to survive? And is my ink durable enough on its own to withstand it? Often the answer is yes. The lamination step is just another one of those autopilot elements. It deserves reflection, and then I wrap this wall and do this step 6 mil product and skip the lamination. Or am I laminating on autopilot because I always laminate wall graphics? Maybe, just maybe, there's a better and even less expensive way or option there. And I frame this one as panels and handoffs, but this is really about communication. This is something that through the wall workshops and the classes that we've been doing, wall jobs that get shipped without good communication are things that I'd say quietly lose money. It's simple stuff. It's the overlap. Okay, which direction am I going to do my overlap on my panels? It's easy to get backwards, right? Which direction? And some of that is knowing in that space where's traffic typically flowing. I always want to set my overlaps away from the door or away from that entry point, so they kind of disappear into the edge. Image bleed. No walls are straight. I don't care your contractor. Adding a 1 inch or 2 inch bleed onto your graphic overall can help compensate for some of the drop ceilings that slope or the corners that aren't quite square. There's production and packaging. How do the panels get cut? How do they get labeled? How do they get packed? Those things it's simple, or so it seems, But those are the things from all the way from sales through to the installer. If you've got good communication throughout, um, it just helps simplify or streamline that flow. Even things, the artwork, does the design, does it account for obstacles? Does it account for the overlap? Are you setting those panels in places where it's in the middle of a skyscraper and you're going to have to align every single window? Or is it just in the sky to the right of that? So I've got a little bit more free space that I can play around with. And the payoff there is that there's less rework, it's protected schedule, it's protected margin. And I think you make small gains at each handoff, and it just compounds into a more profitable job. Okay, so we go back to risk. What can go wrong? And did we already have the information to prevent it? That second half is a real question, right? Is it fresh or uncured paint? That's the number one cause of wall graphic failure. Is it a compromised base layer they didn't prime or they just patched it the day before? That's where drywall and paint let go maybe before the adhesive does. Is it texture beyond what the film can conform to or what it can handle? Was the paint applied without primer? And that's the hard part, right? You can't see that until you lift up the paint and tape or the tape or the patch test, right? Is there excess moisture in the wall or in the room? Those are going to either impact the anchorage of. We just saw this a couple weeks ago where it was the anchorage of the skim coat to the drywall underneath that was then primed, and within 2 hours after the primer, because it was dry, they applied a graphic over top of it. And the primer had re-wet the skim coat and wasn't cured on its own. And when they lifted, skim coat came straight off drywall. That excess moisture that was still in that wetted skim coat, even it hadn't cured. These different layers require a little bit of time. Or the temperature cycling. Is it near an exterior wall? Is it windows? Is it a drywall vent or an HVAC vent blowing directly? Or is it an environment where it isn't humidity or temperature controlled, and it's going to go from freezing to boiling, overnight, big swings there. The encouraging part is that the patch test really catches almost all of this. Almost every failure mode on this list gives you a signal in 24 hours if you take the 24 hours. If you run into something that doesn't align, ask more questions. A red flag in the process should change the material, the prep, the install, or the customer expectation. If it doesn't, maybe you haven't gone deep enough yet, or you haven't asked the right questions. And that's part of being the expert, not just spotting the risk, but communicating it clearly before the job is in motion. Now let's talk about where graphics actually show up, because this is fun. This is the revenue side, right? Just like with window graphics, I break it into it's informational, it's decor, and it's promotional or advertising. And we see this wayfinding and information. It's showing up in offices and hotels, sporting venues and things where it's room numbers, it's directories, it's donor walls. It's decoration, it's murals. Oh, the number of school murals. And this time of year, we're getting into that. Healthcare, education. We were just at a bank doing some demo material last week with some decor elements. And then promotional, where it's retail branding, it's campaign walls, often repeated across numerous locations, often on a tight schedule. Those are the ones also to watch out for that paint cure, because contractor finished and I need to install in 4 days. Again, risk. What can we do to mitigate that? These are profitable avenues. One thing, and I don't want to give you a rate card. I don't want to tell you, it's always going to be this, this square footage on a wall mural, but it is not uncommon to be in the $10 to $16 a square foot range for smooth wall murals, more if it's a textured wall. And in a couple hours, for a wall graphic to make the same margin, the same amount that you would on a multi-day vehicle wrap install. These should be a part of your repertoire. Wall work is really a valuable space, and it makes such an impact on that finished environment. It's not just about the square footage of the film. Okay, so what's next? And there are a couple things here. So the hands-on workshops, we had a number of these through the spring, and these will be coming back, where we get into site assessment, surface testing, panel layout, install techniques, kind of the basics. That's an introductory sort of, if you're a designer, installer, back of house, and you want exposure to the installation process, those hands-on workshops are fantastic for taking the concepts and turning them into reality, right? The next is a certification program, and this is coming soon, and it's how you make it visible. This will be a GF credential, and that's something that, you know, not only walks through all of the elements of a successful from the surface material method and risk standpoint, but it's a credential your customer sees when they're deciding who gets the job. I'd say keep an eye out on our socials, our training homepage for dates and locations. I'm really excited for what's coming with both of those as we get into fourth quarter and beyond. And the other part is just keep going. Ask good questions. Experiment with different materials. Get better. And I say repeat and share, not just with customers, with coworkers, with your employees, if you're the ones running the shop. Share it with your team. The habit that separates the shops that grow into wall work from the ones that keep turning down, I think, is that curiosity and that experimentation as we go. A couple things to take with you. The GF Interior Wall Application Guide covers wall prep, cleaning, priming, cure, the patch test protocol, and it sort of walks through that material method or surface material method and risk mindset. What could go wrong if I'm doing these things. GF technical data sheets, those are on our website, either the resources page or right on the home page. And you can look at full specs and recommended applications for those. And then for samples and guides, again, I recommend get your hands on some of these materials. You can email your sales rep, your customer service rep, email your distributor if you're working with one. Or if you want any of those or any of the prior guides that we worked with surface intelligence or windows or vehicles, email training@generalformulations.com and we can get those for you as well. 3 things to take from today. Number 1, read the wall before you order the film. Before you print, check the paint, the texture, the age, the condition, and set that requirement for what the solution needs to do before you even start talking product numbers, right? 2, match that material and the method to the surface. The film answers for the conformability, the adhesive answers for the grip and the hold, and your prep and your technique, they decide how well those are going to go together into that final solution. And then 3 is just test before you commit. The patch test is the cheapest insurance you will get in this entire category, right? And it turns that accidental success into repeatable success. So the repeatable process is simple. Inspect what's on the wall, verify the conditions that you can't see, test before you commit, and then even document what you found. And that's how you move from guessing to specifying. Next month, we've got one coming up on why graphics fail. We're moving from walls to the failure itself, how to make sure they don't. We'll cover the common causes of adhesion failure, lifting, bubbling, degradation across wall, window, and vehicle applications, warning signs before they become warranty signs, right? And the diagnostic mindset. How do we approach these things for troubleshooting? I kind of focus on technology, technique, and troubleshooting. This one's really heavy on that troubleshooting mindset. And that's it. Know your surface, know your material, ask the questions before you reach for the roll, and that is wall graphics.